and welcome to Unapologetic Live on this most auspicious Thursday. I'm Amla Panobi, your host. We got Taylor here as well.
What's going on?
Happy to be here, guys. Hope you are happy as well. Let me know in the comments down below in the live chat, how's your Thursday going? Mine is going fantastic. It's been full of haters. You know, we did this Dylan Mulvaney video. Dylan responded by making a TikTok video on his own platform, and I made a response podcast. And the leftist haters who want to call me a transphobe and a bigot and tell me to kill myself are just relentless. It's been a beautiful thing to witness how hive mind truly works when they are trying to come after somebody. So you guys can check out some of the messages that I've been getting by going to my Instagram. If you'd like to follow me there at the Lepanobi, you can follow me at all other platforms by simply typing in my name and finding me there. Let's get into what we're going to talk about today. There's a number of things. There was an article made by HillReporter.com talking about Dennis Prager and some recent comments that he made on the Dennis Prager show, the radio show that he hosts every day that I'm sure some of you are fans of. This will be in relation to hate crimes and whether or not many of them are hoaxes. And if so, who are the people who are committing these crimes of creating these fake hoaxes? After that, we're going to talk about a Buzzfeed article that I found this morning, actually that was sent to me. So shout out to the person who sent this to me on Twitter, of 21 unwritten rules for Black people. Let's see if they actually apply. Let's see if these are rules that I practice and abide by in my daily life, and why some people may think these rules exist. And for a second, we might touch on everything that's happening with Chris Pratt right now. It's been an interesting story, and we saw James Gunn come in and back him today. So we'll talk about that as well. Let's get into this article from HillReporter.com. Here's the title. Watch. PragerU founder says, odds are overwhelming. Black students are behind hate speech on campuses. Let's take a look. So let's first show the video in question before we get into this article. Here's the video in question of Dennis. Oh, look at him. America's grandfather. And here's what he had to say on his show.
This is a prediction. I rarely make predictions. What I talk about is what people need to do, not my predictions for the future. But I have a prediction. Twitter will be flooded with hate. And a lot of it will come from people on the left who want to show how hate-filled it is. It's like the race hoax industry. If you see a noose on a college dorm of a Black student, the odds are overwhelming that the noose was put there by a Black student. If you see the N-word on a dormitory building, the odds are overwhelming that a Black student actually did that. We're filled with race hoaxes. Why? To show how racist the country is, we need these hoaxes. Jussie Smollett is the most famous. That's what we're going to have on Twitter, plus genuine hate. You'll have hate made up, and you will have genuine. That is correct. That is the price of free speech. That is entirely accurate.
Okay. So I'm curious. Let me know if you heard anything that sort of made you see red during that video, because I think it was pretty reasonable to say some of the things that he was saying. Let's start off with the first part of his statement, talking about how we're going to see this overwhelming amount of hate on Twitter, whether it be real or fake, and it will most likely be a mixture of both. I would say that is largely true. As we all know and believe for the most part, tell me if you disagree in the comments down below, the demand for racism, sexism, bigotry, the demand for it is so much larger than the supply in this country in particular. Now, if you want to talk about other countries, we can talk about how racist other countries are comparatively to the United States. But the demand for racism here and bigotry and all these forms of discrimination and oppression is so much higher than the supply. And this is why we have to have these race hoax and stories that pop up that people use to support this narrative that they've created. Because if you really go out into our modern society and meet people and talk to them and talk about these issues of race and sexuality and gender, by and large, you're going to find people who are pretty accepting and tolerant. They just don't want to be told what to do, and they don't want their lives bothered by these ideas and these social issues. So again, I think racism is few and far between. very hard to find. We talked about this on a previous episode, and I asked you guys, how many racist people do you really know in your lives? And I believe 70% of you are like, I don't have anybody who's close to me or in my life that is racist in any way, shape, or form. So that, to me, sort of shows where we stand as a society, yet there seems to be a large group of people, or maybe we can call them a small fringe group of people, that want to paint a depiction of this country that shows that America is racist, the people who live here are racist, specifically white males in this country are born with inherent racism, unconscious bias, or the direct outward bias towards people of different skin tones and backgrounds. And come on, it's not true. And there's very little evidence to support it, although we are conjuring evidence now, seemingly, because that's how the narrative prevails. That's how we let people know, and we, quote, educate them about these issues. And I wanted to look into this and sort of look at the claim here that if a hate crime is reported, most likely it was actually committed by a black student or a student of the background that the hate crime is claimed to be against. And of course, there's a lot of evidence to support this. Now, it's really hard to look into hate crimes in today's day and age because apparently everything's a hate crime. I made an episode of my show talking about how men are men and women are women, and apparently that's a hate crime, and that's hate speech and all that fun stuff. So how we define a hate crime has morphed. People are far more sensitive to talking talking these issues and the things that are being said around these issues, and a lot of people will jump to say that a hate crime has been committed against them when it hasn't. On a personal note, take issue with the whole idea of there being a thing called a hate crime. That is something that is so difficult to prove. It is something that only the person in that situation would ever know what would happen or why it happened. And to have these situations where you bring people through the justice system and through our court system and then somehow try to speak to their bias in a situation is a really difficult thing to do. I feel the same way about hate speech. It's just speech, and it's speech that you don't like. Now, if you've committed a crime like assault, battery, homicide, even if we want to go to the more extreme cases, you should go to jail for that. You should be prosecuted for that, and you should go through our legal system and get what is coming to you. But when we bring in these ideas of hate crime and hate speech and bias attached to the crime, prosecute the person for the crime they committed and move on. If you would, please. I would love to live in a society where we just did that and moved on. And I find that the talk around hate crimes really just makes us sensitive to it. I was reading articles that say, hate crimes have gone up exponentially over the past decade. Come on. Our society is not getting more racist. It is really not getting more bigoted, unless you want to count towards white people. But nobody wants to have that conversation. And apparently hate crimes can't be committed against white people. So sorry, guys. But yeah, have hate crimes really gone up in the past decade? I don't think so. And I don't think there's much evidence to support it. Now, we can talk about the hate crimes that we are aware of. The Jussie Smollett's, with the MAGA country and the noose and pouring bleach on me while I was just trying to get home with my subway. Oh, wait. You hired 2 Nigerians to do that to you? And then you were totally fine with the prospect that 2 white men could have been arrested for committing this crime against you, but then you got caught. You created this whole hate crime hoax to fuel this idea that there is racism in America when there was no racist act committed against you. So we have Jussie Smollett. You got Bubba Wallace of this whole ESPN thing, the race car driver who said, "There's a noose in my garage. I found a rope hanging there. This is completely a hate crime against me." And who jumped on it? The FBI said, "We must get down to the bottom of this. We must find this hateful white supremacist who left this rope in Bubba Wallace's garage." Oh, wait. All the garages have ropes? Oh, wait. It's been there for years? Oh, wait. Somebody wasn't threatening you with lynching you? Sorry, guys. And did ESPN sort of go back and try to make this right? Somewhat. They did post about it not being a hate crime. You're seeing this article right here. But in a lot of ways, ESPN just swept this under the rug. I even think they came out with a tweet about a year later talking about a year after the Bubba Wallace incident, we should be talking about racism. Huh? What do you mean we should be talking about racism from the fake incident that was created by the race car driver who wanted to fuel, again, this false narrative? And, you know, Bubba Wallace and Jussie Smollett aren't exactly the blackest people walking around in America. It's like, oh my gosh. It's like when we hear Sean King talk about racism against black people. What's his nickname? Talcum X? You guys aren't exactly the best representation of just like black America. And I can say that apparently because I'm mixed as well. We have very similar skin tones. So my goodness. Then we had the Emory University problem where the N-word was spray painted on walls. The swastika was spray painted on the offices of Jewish workers at Emory University. Come to find out, it was this man by the name of Rayleigh Gordon Jr., who happens to be black as the night, who went and spray painted these racial slurs on the campus. He was simply a disgruntled employee who, again, wanted to fuel a fire, fuel a narrative, and bring discomfort to Emory University. So there's no shortage of false reporting of hate crimes. Here's a whole article on it on diverseeducation.com. You can go through, and they cite all these different instances on university campuses, which is what Dennis talks about specifically, where students have come forth, black students specifically have come forth and said, look at this horrible thing that happened to me. Look at the threats that I've been getting. Look at what's happening on Twitter with all these people yelling and screaming at me. And then they do this investigation, and the investigation finds, oh, well, actually, that was a black student who did that to promote a narrative. There is even a website called fakehatecrimes.org. Now, you're looking at this website and you're like, was that made in like 2004? It looks so janky. But if you go through it, they're on number 465 of faked hate crimes. And all of them, here are the titles of all the hate crimes. Here are the citations for articles that are reporting on them. And we can just click on any given one of these and go straight to the article about a claim made of a racially motivated hate crime that happened to be false. So this one is a police dispute claim of racially motivated vandalism against a black Michigan student. So this one happens to have happened on a university. And guess what? The destruction of property, the vandalism was actually committed by a black student, and it was not a real hate crime. Now, are there real hate crimes that happen? I put that in quotes because you know how I feel about the entire idea of there being a hate crime. Certainly, these things happen. Have we now created an increase or an influx of hate crime reports because we're now in such a sensitive society where if you say something like all lives matter, you've committed a hate crime? I would go as far as to say, yes, that is where we are at now. And progressives don't have a lot to back them when they talk about racism in America and this idea of systemic oppression. So what do you do when you don't have evidence to back it? You create that evidence. You mold this dialogue surrounding the things that you are talking about, and you try to convince people that that is in fact the reality. I went and was trying to read about the surge in hate crimes. And here's this article out of bestcolleges.com that you can go and look at. What you need to know about hate crimes on campus. It goes through, it gives you the definition. It talks to you about the rate of hate crimes increasing every year. Look at that. From 2010, we're down here to about 1,200 hate crimes. Up to 2019, nearly 2,000 hate crimes. Why, in such a progressive, forward society, are we getting more racist and more hateful and more bigoted towards people? I'd speculate that we're not. And we can look back at our society and look at all the progress that we've made. And of course, most of the hate crimes are in relation to race, because those are the conversations we're having right now. We're having racialized conversations, of course. Then we have second. Second is a sexual orientation. Guess what? And I'm going to go ahead and put out my prediction. What did Dennis say? I rarely make predictions, but I'm going to make a prediction today that in months from now, maybe even next year, you're going to start getting reports saying that hate crimes against LGBTQ plus people are going up exponentially in a rate that we've never seen before in this country. That's what you're going to hear. Because who's the victim right now of the progressive left? The victim is transgender people. The victim is people who identify with LGBTQ plus and that whole marginalized group of people. So that's what we're going to see. Those are the reports that we're going to get. That's what the media is going to push forth. And then eventually, some way they'll find a way to say that you can commit a hate crime against somebody in the name of climate change or something like that. And that will be the next report that we start getting, because I feel like that's going to be their next endeavor as well. Now, this article from bestcolleges.com that states about the rising epidemic of hate crimes was reviewed by Angelique Jihan. Who is Angelique Jihan? Let's read about her. Angelique Jihan works to support and repair the connections people have to themselves people have to themselves and their family, communities, and cultural practices. Angelique Jihan is a queer, Asian, gender binary, non-conforming parent. Oh my gosh. I just can't. That's all you really need to know. That's all you really need to know. Working with the Health and Healing Justice Committee of the National Queer and Trans Asian and Pacific Islander Alliance. This is what academia looks like today. So, of course, all these reports are going to tell you, look at the rise in hate crimes. Look at the rise in people identifying with different sexualities and different genders, and those people being assaulted and being targeted on campuses and targeted on social media, because that's the zeitgeist of today. That's what we're talking about. That's where progressives are. And yes, I do think that Twitter is going to increase in hate once we open up the floodgates and allow everybody to be on there, but it's not going to be real. In a lot of ways, it's not going to be real. It's going to be people going, look at this thing that I tweeted from my burner account that says the N-word. Elon Musk allowed us to have free speech on Twitter, and now the N-word is everywhere. Oh my gosh. And black people are going to be like, I don't care. Who cares? You weren't calling me the N-word. I don't care. And they're going to be like, look at this. Look at this. I had to log into my other account after I tweeted this thing to show you the hate that is happening on Twitter, because they can't allow themselves to be wrong, and they will never admit that. So if the floodgates open and suddenly there's not an abundance of hate on Twitter and we're all just having meaningful conversations and going back and forth with each other, trying to debunk arguments or talking about the trending news of the day, they can't have that. That's too peaceful. That's too normal. It's too much a representation of how successful American values can be, and that disgusts them. So there's going to have to be hate, whether or not it's real or botted or just fake burner accounts that people are making to create hoaxes. That's what's going to happen. So this Hill Reporter article goes in and says, well, we've heard conservatives blame marginalized groups for their own oppression before, and specifically accusing them of faking hate crimes. And obviously is an attack on Dennis and an attack on the words that he said. But in this article, I don't find examples of you debunking anything that Dennis said, and it's in fact a very short article, probably because they couldn't find anything to debunk what Dennis said. All they could do was attack him on the words and say that he's a right-wing media commentator who's just postulating conservative values. So then debunk the argument. So then point out the times where hate crimes are happening and they're not hoaxes, and talk to me about the stats regarding that, and go and look up all these hate crimes where they are hoaxes and tell me why that's happening, and explain this massive phenomenon of people faking things against them that are racist, bigoted, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, whatever, and tell me why they're doing that.
Well, Amala, you know PragerU's not a real university. You can't take courses at PragerU.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So every time that somebody writes a hit piece on PragerU, somewhere in the article there is something like this. And here it is in HillReporter.com. Prager University is not an educational institution. There are no classes, tuition, or degrees involved. We never said there was.
Busted. They totally got us.
You got us. I'm actually I'm gonna take the headphones off, and I'm going to just leave the studio. Bye, guys.
We're outed.
Yeah. No. We're called Prager University because our 5-minute videos and the content that we create gives you something that universities do not give you, and educates you on virtually anything you can really ever have questions on as far as it pertains to politics, sociology, the economy, lifestyle. And you don't get that from universities. So you leave watching PragerU videos more educated than you ever would leaving Harvard or Yale. That's why we call ourselves PragerU. So to go, they're not a real educational institution. You can't get a degree from them.
As though that debunks what he says.
Yes.
It's the definition of ad hominem.
Oh, it really is. It's just like, okay, do you have anything else to say? Do you have anything that actually criticizes what Dennis said in his video? And again, if any of you who are watching have a criticism of it, write it down below and we will address it. So that's all I had to say about all the Dennis Prager stuff. We're going to get into this BuzzFeed article that was sent to me this morning. Here it is. Black people are sharing the rules that they follow that most white people don't even know about. And this is so important. This is so important. So I am half black and half white. So I'll be able to comment on this from two different perspectives and tell you whether half of myself chooses to follow these rules and the other half doesn't or was completely unaware of them. Let's take a look. Rule number 1. No matter how angry you get, you try and remain calm. If you raise your voice even a little, regardless of what you say or how you say it, you are instantly labeled an angry black woman and judged wrongly, even when you're right. Anonymous.
You spoke a little bit too loud when you said that. Could you
So sorry.
kind of sound like an angry black woman? Could you whisper?
I have never experienced something like this in my life. And in fact, I have made quite a stand making videos that are extremely expressive. And sometimes people would say higher in volume than the average person talks. Definitely not in an inside voice. And I have never been called an angry black woman. So no, this is not applied to me. If you're a black person watching this right now and this applies to you, this whole caricature of an angry black woman is just to me, it's just a projection, you know? I rarely see people I don't think I've ever heard anybody been like, that's just an angry black woman. That's all she is. Now, I'm sure there are people who do say that because there can be this sort of caricaturized idea of what you can be in any race. And let's make this clear. Stereotypes for any race, which there are thousands for every single race, they exist for a reason. They really do. Just like the Karen, which is this idea, this caricature of a white older woman who calls the manager. Why does that exist? Because it happens. And in today's day and age, it happens and it's on video and you can find hundreds of videos of this happening. And it speaks to a cultural stereotype. Blows my mind that people get so offended by things that are said because, you know, they can be true. Now, as far as angry black woman, I have not heard this enough in my life to even think that this is a very common stereotype. But even if it is, often these things are based on actual encounters that people have. So have you heard the angry black woman stereotype, Taylor?
I mean, I've heard of it, but then, no real life examples come to mind, just like certain TV characters or whatever.
I've heard of it. Like, I think Tyler Perry has like the Diary of an Angry Mad Black Woman or something like that. And that was a movie that I watched as a kid. And some of the caricatures in those movies are very clear and a clear depiction of this like angry black woman. But I rarely hear that as like something that white people say to characterize a black woman. If anything, I've heard that from black men characterizing black women. So yeah, stereotypes exist for a reason. Like, get over it.
White dads really do say it's not the heat that gets you. It's the humidity.
Right.
When they see their neighbor washing their car, they stop and say, "Can you do mine next?"
When they finish up at the restaurant, they go, "You're going to have to roll me out of here in a wheelbarrow."
Exactly.
So come
they
on.
They exist for a reason. So we may not know any directly, but these stereotypes do exist.
Right. These stereotypes do. I'm sure they exist. I'm not going to say that this stereotype does not exist, even though it's something that I have not seen. But come on. Why are we so sensitive about everything? Everything just makes people want to like sit in fetal position and cry. Imagine if I did that every time I got a horrific comment or something that was hateful. Angry black woman is not even that horrible. It's just like, oh, you're a black person and you're angry. Oh my God, the horror, the racism. I get horrible comments on a daily basis, and it's not to say that that's a good thing to do. But if we, in this life, curl up and cry or get upset and offended every time something that we don't like is said, we'd all be sitting in fetal position crying our eyes out all day long. Because c'est la vie. That is life. That is life. Number 2. My mother taught me to always ask for a bag and receipt, no matter how small the purchase, or you can be accused of stealing. I mean, there's really nothing to like push back on this. It's just an anecdotal piece of information. By and large, this does not happen. Black people can enter stores and purchase products. Oh my gosh, crazy. And then walk out of the store with that purchased product and say, no, I don't need a bag, or I don't need a receipt. There's not this massive epidemic of Black people having the police called on them for stealing. As much as the media and social media and progressives themselves would love for you to think that, it's not happening. So let's move on. Number 3. As a Black man, my father taught me when being pulled over by the police to pull your insurance and registration out of the glove box and keep it ready on your seat. That way you don't have to reach in the glove box when the police are at your window. Again, this is all contingent. All of this advice is contingent upon this narrative that as a Black person and as a Black man specifically, there is a constant target on your back. Do you know how disgusting that is to teach your kids that? And what's truly disgusting about it is the people who do teach their kids that are truly convinced by it. So I feel bad for them as well to have to live in fear that much over police officers, which is something that I lived in for a very long time because of what I was taught, is a horrific reality. But it's not reality. The reality is that if you are a Black man that gets pulled over by police officers and you sit there and you go, yes, sir, no, sir, what do you need? My registration? Okay, I'm going to grab that for you now. You grab it, you give it to them, they look at it, and they send you on your way. That's what happens in most police encounters. However, we do get encounters like Philando Castile, a disgusting display of a police officer doing the wrong thing in a situation. And I will admit that till the cows come home, of him going, I do have a registered firearm in the car. I just want to let you know, sir, I'm going to reach for my wallet now. And the police officer shoots him. Horrible thing. It's on video. You can watch it. It is disgusting. It is a clear depiction of malpractice in policing, but it is not representative of what is happening on a daily basis in America. Philando Castile is not the depiction of what's going to happen to the average Black person getting arrested. And you know what? We don't talk about when this happens to white people either. And there are some horrific videos of malpractice in policing happening to white people that are all over the internet if you just take the time to look at them. And yet we've still painted that it's just Black men who experience this. False.
Yeah, and this whole rule is prefaced with "as a Black man," but a lot of people in the comments are saying I'm white and I grew up with this rule as well.
Yep.
This is kind of just general wisdom that however you slice it, you want to make the officer as comfortable as possible and not signal any kind of for quick movements or aggression. So, I was taught like put your hands on 10 and 2, or if, you don't want to be like reaching in the glove box as they come up to your car, but by the time they're there, have your hands somewhere they can see them, have your documents ready, or let the officer know that you're going to reach in. It's like that's just general common knowledge.
Yeah.
It's not, you don't have to racialize this general tidbit of wisdom that everyone with sense should know.
Yeah,
so
it's honestly just good practice. It's just a good practice to do. So you don't put yourself in a bad situation. Yeah. That's the problem that I have with a lot of these discussions that we've had, is that on their face, a discussion around police brutality is not a wrong discussion to be having. You have people who are in our society that suddenly have an excess amount of power, definitely are the most powerful in the situation when you encounter them. We should be talking about whether or not that gives way to things like police brutality and what training we should have around that and how you should respond. But it's not a racialized discussion. We hurt ourselves when we make everything about race, and it just contributes to this polarity where no discussion is ever had about the issues that need to be discussed. Number 4, as a Black woman in a predominantly white area, I make a point of approaching staff first in stores when I walk in. I ask an innocuous question in a friendly, high-pitched voice, even if I don't need anything. They seem to feel safer around me and do not follow me around when I do that first. Alex, I'd like to take things that did not happen for 2000, please. This is not, oh my gosh. It is such a ridiculous thing to do something like this. You are honestly just like placing this upon yourself. This is a figmented reality that you are placing upon yourself in order to support this narrative. And I don't want to blame people who do this because they were like me 4 years ago. They got the same information that I got and are reacting in a very similar way that I did. But you do not need to do that. I want everybody who does something like this and is listening right now to stop for a minute. And tomorrow when you wake up in the morning, go, you know what? I'm just going to lead my normal life and do the things that I would like to do without having these prejudgments of how people are going to treat me, whether or not I'll be followed in a store, whether or not the police are going to be called on me, and just go out and lead your life. And then when you make it to the end of the day and you hit your bed at night and you go, oh, wait, everything was fine and nothing happened to me. Take that as a lesson that maybe you should not allow people to fearmonger you into having this predisposition about just going to the store and shopping. This is ridiculous. It is a ridiculous thing to assume this every time you walk into a store. Number 5. As a Black woman, I usually keep my college jacket in the car. If I have to go to the emergency room, I receive better treatment if doctors see that I have a higher education. Honestly, it's just like, how do you even respond to these anymore? It just doesn't make sense. It's again, just another thing that you're putting in the way of what you do every day because you have this preconceived idea of what's going to happen to you if you don't just act like every other normal person. The way that we stop these issues that we're having surrounding race is to stop talking about it. Is to stop doing these little extra steps that you feel you need to do in order to save yourself and keep yourself in safety. Because guess what? You'll be safe regardless. And that will be the case. And these representations in these videos where that is not the case are few and far between. You have a higher likelihood of being struck by lightning at this point than going through one of the situations that you see in those videos. And it's just sad that so many people have watched this enough and seen this enough and heard the narrative enough to adopt these daily practices. This is not a daily practice because she's talking about going to the emergency room. I would hope that's not a daily practice for anybody, but to adopt this in your brain as just something that is constantly in your thoughts is scary. Let's see. Number 6. I'm from Louisiana where they still have sundown towns. Avoid them at all costs. If you have to pass through at night, make sure you have a full tank of gas so that you don't have to stop. For those of you unaware of sundown towns, they are towns where they are predominantly white, and that in the past, during the Jim Crow era, these towns had laws that kept Black people from being able to live in them. Guess what, guys? This is a great announcement. I think I'm the first person to say this in 2022. Sundown towns do not exist. The laws around sundown towns don't exist anymore. You cannot keep Black people from moving into your town other than having like a random realtor who just refuses to sell to a Black person. And if that exists, that's, again, a small marginal group of people who decide to be racist in their daily life for some reason. But the laws regarding sundown towns and this sort of redlining thing, they don't exist anymore. It's not allowed. Turns out we sort of decided as a society that racism wasn't cool, kids. Don't do the whole racism thing and lead your normal lives, and America will be better off because of it. We decided that quite a long time ago. But I guess a group of people thinks that we have not decided that and that these institutions and things still exist. They don't exist. I even went in to do some reading on these whole sundown towns things to like find out why somebody would say that these are still in existence. And apparently people are saying there's like a second generation sundown town where it's not legally that they don't keep Black people there. It's just socially and culturally that they don't do that. No. And it pairs itself with these things like white flight, that once a Black person moves into the neighborhood, all the white people move out. If that was the case, Obama's neighborhood, Patrisse Cullors' neighborhood, all the white people would be flying away. Because these people who cried about racism, Obama and Patrisse Cullors, the founder of Black Lives Matter, move themselves right into white neighborhoods. And I'm talking $1 million, multi-million-dollar houses right in the middle of these white neighborhoods. Where did all the white people go? They're still there, chilling with the Black Lives Matter activist. So, oh my gosh. You just have to remind yourself that there are people that benefit from convincing you of these realities, and they benefit in a way that we talked about on yesterday's episode. This idea that if you are disempowered and you feel like you lack self-worth, you are easy to manipulate. And the very same people who say you're not worth anything in this country, the white people hate you, the capitalists hate you, this whole system is pitted against you, they go, but I can help you. If you just vote for me, come election time, just I'll fix all of this. And yet every 4 years, the same narrative persists and they're still here to help you again. Where's the help? Where's the changes that they're making? What are they doing for you and for your community? Nothing. Because there's nothing to be done when you create something that doesn't exist. Okay, number 7. I am a white woman, relatively new to my mostly white... I'm a black woman, relatively new to my mostly white neighborhood. When I take a walk for exercise, I always walk in the middle of the street, not too close to houses on either side. I wear reflective gear and avoid staring too closely at any of the houses. I often think of Ahmaud Arbery while I'm walking. I wish I could just, reenact some of this stuff and think about how ridiculous this sounds to wake up every morning and be like... Okay, I want to go for a walk today. I better put on all my reflective gear, which is something that everybody does anyways, so as to not get hit by cars and things of the like. But I'm going to put on reflective gear. I'm going to make sure I just stare straight ahead at where I'm walking. I'm not going to look over to the side because somebody might think I'm robbing them by looking at their house and come and shoot me. No. And if we look at the Ahmaud Arbery case, what a cluster that case is. Because this young man was... quote, jogging in a neighborhood that happened to be miles and miles away from where he actually lived. Okay, so maybe he was going on a very long, 40-mile jog to there and back. Sure. But going through houses, we saw the footage. The footage exists of him going through houses that were being renovated and looking at things and then leaving. Now, did he deserve to lose his life in a situation like this? No. But the idea of this whole walking while black thing or breathing while black, which is what you'll hear the left say a lot. What was my offense? It was walking while black. What was the offense of Ahmaud Arbery? It was jogging while black. What was the offense of somebody like Jacob Blake? It was driving while black. No. Oftentimes, if you look at this, they were actually committing crimes. They were doing something that required law enforcement and somebody to intervene into these situations. Now, should these people have gone and created an altercation that killed Ahmaud Arbery? No. But does that mean that the average black person walking down the street is going to get killed? Also, no. Number 8. I was taught to be an overachiever because no one expects a black woman to be smart and well-spoken. I'm not expected to have a voice in anything, and many are shocked when I do. They are astounded when I can verbalize my thoughts and opinions in multi-syllable words. Melanin ovaries do not cancel out intelligence and reason. You know who you should explain that to? The progressive left, because the progressive left are the ones saying that meritocracy is an extension of white supremacy. They're the ones going into schools and lowering the academic standards, saying that black kids need to succeed, and in order to do that, we need to lower the academic standards for them to move up in grades. They're the ones instituting things like affirmative action, where if you don't meet the academic standing of getting into a college, they just go, oh, we're going to ignore that. We'll just let you into Harvard. We'll just let you into Yale because you're black and you're a female and that's better for us. We love diversity. They're the ones who commit this not soft bigotry, hard bigotry of low expectations. They are the ones who look at black Americans and go, well, I don't expect much from you. I don't expect you to be smart. I don't expect you to be well-spoken, but I still want you to succeed. So let me just remove all the barriers that could, build your spirit, build your character, build all of these different characteristics that would make you a well-rounded and emotionally intelligent and academically intelligent individual. And we'll just pass you through. You guys can just go through the gate. And then when they fail, and when they continue to not meet standards, or when the literacy rates drop, or the college graduation rates drop, they go, well, why did that happen? I'm scratching my head. Because they don't expect anything from you. It's not conservatives who look at black people and go, oh, they're so dumb. They're so ridiculous. They shouldn't have rights. They shouldn't have this. It's progressives who look and say that and think those things and institute policies that say as much. So this idea that this is some rule that you have to have placed on you by being a black person, actually true, but not because of the people that you think, not because of the conservatives, not because the classical liberals, not because any white right-winger, and not because the white man. Although there are some white men on the progressive side that are actually pushing this narrative. So take a deep dive and really think about who expects less of black people, because it's not us. And here I am. I think I'm a pretty well-spoken Black woman, and I think that's achievable for most Black people, but there are people that don't, and they are passing legislation that stops that from happening and stops that from being the case. Sorry. With that note, I think we're going to end the stream on the PragerU side of things, and we're going to go just to Lepanobi, Unapologetic on YouTube, Facebook. We'll also be on PragerU on Facebook if you're still watching there, just not on YouTube. We'll be on Getter. We're also on Rumble, so you can go to any of those platforms and continue to listen to the show. Also on Spotify, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. But we're saying goodbye to PragerU YouTube. Head over to my YouTube and watch there. Rule number 9, never ever put your hands